Hello and welcome. I'm Marie-Nicole and I am an artisan and a coach, and this is my studio shed that I'm working in today. I actually wanted to share with you the process of and even the exploration of the idea of making as medicine. I have had some challenging things happening over the last few weeks, actually, for the last few years, if we're going to be completely honest about it. But the last few weeks has been particularly challenging, and I find making to be really quite medicinal. So I'm going to try something a little bit different today. I actually am going to try making while I talk to you, which is, I don't always find easy. So bear with me. But I actually thought this would be a really good practice to do for myself and to share the process with you of what it is I'm doing. So in my last video, I talked about empower dressing, and I've written an empower dressing guidebook to support people through the whole process of just being themselves, not trying to fit into trends or do what's expected by society's terms. And my making is not much different to that. So I thought it would be really beautiful to share with you the process of me making these feather and leather earrings. And in that guidebook, I actually talk about how jewelry can be medicinal and magical and support you in your everyday living experiences. So I thought today I would make a pair of leather and feather earrings with you. And if I don't get them finished for the video, then well, I'll share the finished product with you at another time. But I wanted to talk you through, first of all, what materials I'm going to be using. And I have here, I actually just have a sip of my lemon and ginger tea first and put that down to stay warm. So what I actually am working with is tawny frogmouth feathers, and I've been getting to know how to work with these feathers. It's only a new feather for me to work with. They are very downy, so they're quite fluffy, and they do have kind of an oily feel to them, and they tend to catch on to things. And I've been just working out the process of not only how to make with them, but what they're like when you're actually wearing them. The earrings that I have on here are a light Sussex rooster feather. I've been working with them for quite some time. And so the tawny frogmouth, I have found the spines to be quite frail. I have to be very careful with them when I'm working with them and actually support the spine as well. I also am working with kangaroo leather lacing, which I work with a lot, and some copper wire. So these are two different grades of copper wire. Now, I have made some earrings out of the copper wire with the tawny frogmouth and leather before, and I will include a little footage of that so that you can see what I'm talking about. And that was one pair was actually my first pair that I'd made with copper wire. It was the first time I'd worked with copper wire. And they're beautiful. I love them, and I get a lot of compliments on them, but they are quite heavy. So when I wear them all day, my ears end up hurting. And it's partly because the hooks are a silver hook, but they're a fine grade silver hook. So I'd like to try and use some thicker grade wire for the silver hook. But that aside, I decided I would make a similar pair to this, which is the 3 strands and feathers and beads, but do it all with a copper wiring, similar to the concept of the Inner Essence Outer Expression earrings that I created. And so that's what I'm going to make with you today. So let's have a bit of fun here and see how this goes. And I want to talk through the challenges that we are faced with and how we can use our hands to process what we are going through. And so while I make, I thought I would talk with you about the whole process of making as medicine. And I'm curious to know whether or not anybody else finds that to be the case. Like, it actually is just the practice of getting into your hands and out of your head, focusing your energy on something that lights you up rather than doing what is expected or what is known and guaranteed. So the first thing I want to do here is to try and choose a leather that I think not only suits the earrings, the colour and the feathers and the copper, but also what it is I'm after in terms of what I wear throughout my days. The darker leather seems to allow the copper to pop more, but I don't have a very dark leather in that bunch, so I'm just going to go and grab another bunch. So I want a dark brown, not necessarily a black. Yeah, that's one that I think I'd like to work with. And that's nice and soft as well. So the reason I choose to work with these materials is, other than the fact that I actually really love working with elements of wild nature, and the tawny frogmouth, this was one that was actually hit by, I don't know if it was hit by a car or a truck. It was actually in very good physical condition when I picked it up. I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't, there was no skin broken on it. It was still intact in that regard. But it was in the middle, it was in the median strip on the off ramp of the highway that we drive almost every day into town. And so the reason I like the tawny frogmouth, I thought it was pretty special to have a tawny frogmouth. 18, 17, 12. That's what I was going to do. The tawny frogmouth is a nocturnal bird, and that for me represents actually going into the shadows. So, like I said, I've had some challenges that I've been processing, and to be able to go within and work through shadow patterns that maybe unconsciously creating the challenges that I'm facing is what I really like about working with a nocturnal bird. And the copper wire is really representative of the flow of energy, and because it is a conductor of energy. So these are materials that are reasonably new for me to work with. I've worked with leather and feathers for a while, for quite a while, and made earrings and sold them. But the tawny frogmouth and the copper is still reasonably new. So I haven't yet listed any of these to sell because I want to understand the material a little more first before I do that. So this is not a sales pitch on my earrings. There are other earrings in my shop that are available that are made from feathers that I do know how to work with if you do want to have a look at that. But this is more about me sharing with you the process of learning, trying, and discovering new things. So I've just cut my pieces in the different lengths that I want to work with. And this is a really tricky part. Actually, I should have got my glue out before I started recording. So I have found this part to be quite tricky when it comes to working with the tawny frogmouth. So I'm going to set aside my pieces that are the earring parts that are going to be the main part of the earrings. And then I'm going to cut some more leather that I will use to support the back of the spine. And I usually like to take it all the way down to the end and then a little bit beyond. And then it's a process of gluing it carefully to the feathers so that it doesn't mess up the feather. That's the challenge. And the way I like to do that is to actually cut along the leather and create more of a slimline lacing piece rather than it being too thick, and try and get it to actually align with the shape of the spine itself. So I'll try and show you here that spine curves, and so I try and cut the leather so it will curve with the spine. Now I do often do that on a cutting mat with a blade, but today I'm going to try and just do it with these scissors and make it as neat as possible. And I use an eco-friendly glue that I get from my leather suppliers, and it is quite a strong bond glue, so sometimes it is a good idea to water down the glue when working with fine things like feathers. Now, I haven't watered down this one. I think I need to. I tend to keep the base of the glue pot. I'll go and get the glue pot and show you. It's a leather cement that's non-flammable. Now, I get this here in Australia. I'm not sure. I'm sure that they're... Oh, no, this is made in the US as well. So, but yeah, I get it here in Australia. So it's a high-strength glue that's for leather, and it's a flexible glue. So that's why I like to work with that. I do keep the bottom of an old pot. I put the pot of glue into a Ziploc bag and I seal up the Ziploc bag, but I don't actually push the plastic into the pot because you end up wasting a lot of glue doing that. But the reason I started keeping the bottom of the pot and using it just a little bit at a time is also if you end up putting some of the, say, leather or feather into the glue ends up smelling really badly. That's one reason. And it just keeps your glue pot fresh. So I'm just going to try and place this on carefully and not grab the fine strands of the feather while I do it. And also not have too much excess glue come out from behind the leather. It is something I like to try and keep as neat as possible. And yeah, so sometimes it's a good idea to water down the glue if it's been sitting there and it's dry, but the glue when it comes out of the pot is actually generally pretty liquidy. So I'm not watering that down today. So let's talk about I was going to tell you more about why I work with kangaroo leather. And kangaroo leather is, well, part of the reason I started working with kangaroo leather is for the sustainability aspect. And the kangaroo being quite wild and free here in Australia, roaming around our lands. And there is actually a harvesting program that takes place in the national parks where the skins go to a particular tannery and they vegetable tan the skins. And that's what I use to make my kangaroo fur vests. So sustainability is a big aspect of the work that I like to do. And I do not advocate for animal cruelty whatsoever. So I'll just say that up front. I am an animal lover. But I do also know from experience that culling and dumping is actually quite devastating for our environment. I used to live on farms where I would witness gullies full of kangaroo carcasses from the culling that was taking place to keep the numbers down, and I think that that's a real waste. So I started working with kangaroo for that reason, just to bring awareness to this material that is actually very functional and very strong, and it's a lightweight, strong leather. It's actually been used for many years to make running shoes and even boots. And so I really wanted to work with this material for that reason, because it's like I'd rather see it go to use than go to waste. And but from a spiritual perspective, the kangaroo represents that always moving forward and not getting caught up in our past and our blocks from the past, but remembering that everything can continue to move forward and does continue to move forward regardless of our past experiences. So for me, that's a beautiful reminder that yes, you might be going through a challenge right now that is hard to overcome, but you will actually move forward from this if you continue to look in the direction you're wanting to head rather than get caught up in what is limiting you from behind. So yeah, just hope that gives you a little bit of inspiration yourself. If you're feeling challenged in any way, that take some inspiration from the kangaroo and just keep leaping forward, and life will support you on your journey. So when it comes to actually processing our challenges and using making as a way for health and well-being, I think that it is something that we as a society have become a little disconnected from in the mainstream, I would say, in terms of it. There are easy, convenient and easy ways to obtain what we want to obtain. But when we actually create, not even just for ourselves, but creating for others, there is a beautiful connection to the product, to the person, to the process. And I used to have a commercial space which actually focused on that. Locally made, handcrafted, one of a kind, and Australian design. Now, some things were made not en masse, but with larger quantities, but most of the things in that shop were actually made small scale by small makers who were professional, who did hone their craft and their skills and understood the materials that they were working with and earned their living through doing that. And I have no doubt that those makers actually find it therapeutic to make with their hands as well. I don't think I'm alone in that. And I just thought it was really a beautiful way to connect customers to what they're actually buying as well. So I had my artisanal workshop in the space itself, my atelier, I should say. And so all of the furniture that's in here used to be in this commercial space, and I would make on site so people could see the process of the creation of the products that I was selling of my range. And I had some other designers and makers also make their own goods in there. And so it actually helped connect the customer to the product and the people. And it develops that emotional appreciation and respect for what goes into creating goods. And I did struggle with people expecting to be able to get a discount if they bought more than one of something. And I never gave discounts. I actually preferred to give a bonus something else than a discount because if they bought more. And I always gifted people things anyway, no matter what they purchased. They walked out with a little thank you gift. But it's just that whole element of it's not just about price. These are people who are spending a lot of time honing their craft and their skills and getting to know the material, not getting paid for that aspect. So when they finally bring a material to the point of actually being sold in a commercial space, there's a lot of recovery of cost there that they are also accounting for. So I thought it was really important for people to see that. And for some people, actually, the making was their mental health practice. It was a way of processing their life challenges. And so, even though they may not have taken a full income from the production of those materials, it was something that helped them sustain health and well-being. And so I feel that that is something as a society we've actually overlooked. We've actually not recognized that by having everything made for us or provided, just a click of a button and it's delivered, we actually lose that element of the beautiful magic that takes place when we actually get involved in the process ourselves. Now, I know it's not sustainable for us to make absolutely everything, but I highly recommend that if there is a craft that you have been wanting to learn and you feel like you don't have time for it, I would recommend finding space in your days to, or even just in your weeks, to actually engage in it because it is so empowering, so rewarding. And then when you use that product, it is a reminder constantly of your empowerment and the abilities that you have because not everyone can utilize their hands in this way. Some people find it very hard. Like my youngest son was saying the other day that he finds it hard to thread a needle. I have industrial machines and he was helping me with actually threading the needle on one and he struggled with it. So, it's not all of our talents and skills to do handcrafting and make things. But in the same respect that he is very mechanically minded and he works on vehicles and That's not everybody's cup of tea. So we all have our unique gift to add to the collective tapestry, which is why I am constantly harping on that, because I truly believe it. I believe we all have our unique thread to contribute to the collective tapestry. And for some of us, that is actually making and creating with our hands, or others, it's creating sound and music or poetry and words. And whatever it is that we feel naturally drawn to, then that is generally our gift that we are here to give to the collective. So actually not engaging in it is keeping that gift away from the collective, let alone the suffering it creates for ourselves when we don't engage in our gifts, because we end up being frustrated. And I mean, I've witnessed that in other people who have tried to just get on with, keeping a job that pays the bills, and not engaging in their gift, and having that work against them mentally because it doesn't fulfill their soul's purpose. And their soul's purpose was to actually engage in some creative practice and create. Not necessarily make with leather and feathers because like I said, we all have our own unique skill set and talent. So it's connecting with what our skills are and amplifying them, enhancing them, and really allowing ourselves that ability to expand on them. So I'm now going to. I used to actually peg feathers. I shouldn't say I used to. I've pegged other feathers, and I have these amazing bamboo pegs, which I absolutely love. I have a lot of these because I actually usually keep them. I should show you this beautiful. I have a lot of, this is not even all of them, but I have these brick molds, these antique brick molds that I keep my pegs in. And I keep those out here in the shed. But when I take this box into the house, so I can handcraft in the house, I just have some pegs in there. And that's what I was accessing my pegs from today. I'm just going to double check my fire because it is rather cold. I did take my cardigan off so I could, because I was actually warming up, and also because I was just trying to reduce how many layers were coming in contact with the glue. But now I'm feeling a bit chilly because the wind is picking up. Putting that fireplace in here has been such a gift. That it was challenging working out here over winter. So that is my feathers on my leather, and now while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to just make some, what will I call them? They look like springs, I guess you could say. I want to make it for the top, instead of the beads at the top here. I'll show you down here. So instead of the beads at the top here, or the bead, I'm going to do some wire, I'll make wire beads, copper wire beads. I guess that's what you could call it. And I'm going to guess how long they will be, but I do like to always cut two pieces the same length and then sand off the edge of the wire, just so that I get the sharp edge off it. And that will be a little bit noisy, sorry. But that just stops it from catching on my clothes and my skin. There's a fine sandpaper as well. I think I talked about this in another video. But just a quick sand. Hello, Gibbous. Gibbous is coming over to see what I'm up to. You want to say hello to Gibbous? Over here. Come here. Sit. This is Gibbous. Hello, Gibbous. He's very curious. So I guess I would really like to know what it is you like to do to make in some way that actually helps you process the challenges that you have and get you out of your head. What's your magic you like to engage in? I'd love for you to leave a comment with that piece of information because I'm curious as to the type of people that are drawn to this video playlist that I've just started creating on artisanal living, because I do believe it's not just making with hands that is what I would consider artisanal. I also see cooking, gardening, all manner of things that are artisanal. So if you want to know what I'm doing here, I don't know if you can see that on that video, I just use a round set of pliers. They're completely cylindrical. They are not even in, they go to a point. So I start at the end and I make it how big I want it to be. And then I just keep turning it and try and keep that consistent in the turning. Bend it. And I will show you what I do to try and make, I think I'm going a little bit smaller at that end, which is what I want to avoid. Yeah, I've really enjoyed learning how to work with a copper. It is a very different material to what I've worked with before. I've always been fascinated with jewellery making, but I haven't necessarily done it. And I say metal smithing, I should say. I've made jewellery with finished findings that I've purchased, but making the findings myself is something that I'm keen to learn. Gibbous. No. I did do a workshop on how to silversmith your own earrings and rings. I think we did rings. Yeah. There's an option to do. I ended up not doing a ring. I ended up making findings that I use for leather cuffs, kangaroo leather cuffs that I used to make, like decorative ornamental cuffs that you wear. I do a lot of cowhide and kangaroo leather cuffs for watch faces, and used to just do the cuffs like with stampings of patterns and messages. And I was making for a little while there a kangaroo version. And so for that particular workshop, I made rings to add an adornment to my cuff, and that was really fascinating. But I also in that workshop made a pair of earrings and earring hooks out of sterling silver, and it is something I would give us quiet. It is something I would actually like to expand on my knowledge in. So one day I will. But what I'm going to show you down here is these are more flat pliers on one side and a bit rounded on the other, and they just seem to have a little bit more grip to them. So I do use these to bring the springs of the loops together to create more consistency in the gaps between them. But I feel like that might be sufficient for that one. I will actually tidy it up once I put the leather through. Just going to have a little trial of, the loops might be a bit big. Oh no, that's good. Okay, so I'll do the other one. The other thing I was going to share about why I started working with copper is because this studio shed that I have here is quite big. It's a double door garage, all dedicated to my workspace. I mean, there's a few instruments and things from the kids and the games when it was their play space for a little bit for 6 years when I had a shop in town. This was their play space. But we are in the process of selling this property because I have been divorced in the last 3 years and still finalising the final stages of the divorce now. Selling the property, and I will be moving out of here, and I am not exactly sure what I'll be moving into in terms of a space that or have a maker space. So I started working with the copper to see if I could potentially just make little things and let go of making my leather goods, which I can't. I will have to either join a creative co-working space um, or find a bigger location for my workshop, because it is a part of what I do. I mean, I make leather bags and pouches, and I use industrial machines and my kangaroo vests, and I have other goods that I want to make commercially as well. Not to be a large scale producer. I've never wanted to make too much en masse, even though when I did travel to trade at markets and I had a commercial space, I made a lot more production wise than I do these days. I actually thought I could become a digital nomad and let go of handcrafting as an income stream and just make for myself. But I don't know, I like seeing other people enjoy my products too. And that's a part of the beauty of it, is actually having other people who don't have those skills enjoying what you craft and the outcome of your experimentation. So I don't think I'll stop making as an income stream. It just may not be as big a part of my income stream as what it has been over the last 17 years, and that's okay. But so I wanted to actually experiment with copper to see if I could just make little things if I didn't have space to create big things. And I really love it. It's been such a good material for me to work with. And aside from the fact that, it is a conductor of energy, and so I like that spiritual aspect of it too, that it just reminds us that energy flows. It's neither created or destroyed. It just keeps moving through. And that's a representation of our life as well, that, nothing is really created or destroyed. It just takes another form. And copper is a conductor of that. Now, I'm not sure if you can see that down there. I've got two different angles being filmed, and I'm not sure which one to concentrate on. So I am trying not to think about that too much and just enjoy the process as well, and enjoy you being here with me while I make, which, I live in a rural location, and I'm on a hill in a little village, and it's just off the main arterial highway for the region. So it is accessible to other areas, but it is a fairly isolating existence. I don't actually physically see other people very often anymore. And I'm okay with working on my own, but I do at times miss that interaction that I used to get with people either at markets or in the shop when it came to the making process, because I used to make on my market stall, and people would come up, and I'd do my hand stitching and finishing things off on the market stall, and people would come up and talk to me about what I was making, and that was really interesting for them, and it was also beautiful for me to share it with other people. So that's why I thought I would start this artisanal channel, where artisanal playlist, where I get to share with you some of the making process, because that's a part of the joy of it, is sharing it. And yes, I could run workshops, but at the moment I am a single mum living in a little rural town, a village in a rural location. It's not, getting people out here for workshops has not necessarily been something that I have found too easy to do, and time is of the essence. So I'm just making the most of what I can do with what I've got. And this is, at the moment, the best way to do that, to actually connect with the outside world and enjoy my crafting and my beautiful animals and their company. Now, I've made this one a little bit tighter. Wondering if I can work it open again, or I might just cut the leather a bit slimmer. The other thing I used to get a lot when I was in the shop is, because I work with feathers, and I used to work with repurposed blankets as well. So repurposed blankets to make instrument cases and bags and technology sleeves. I still do make those to order, but I don't have a big range like I used to. And duffel bags, they were a big product range that people love. And I have also made those since closing the shop to order as well, but I don't keep them in stock. But the thing I was going to share is that in the store, I used to get people coming in with their feathers from there, because I'm in a rural location. Lots of people had their own chickens, and these here are some beautiful heritage chicken feathers that I do also plan to make a pair of earrings out of. I've only got these 4 feathers that are complementary and shape-wise that could work for a pair of earrings. And there were some longer rooster feathers similar to this, but they were a lot fluffier. So I'm going to make a set of earrings out of those. And so a beautiful customer who brought those in for me, she'd been collecting feathers for a number of months, just and in the same way that I used to collect these feathers originally, where it was just roaming around picking it up in the yard where the poultry had dropped them. She did that with hers and came in with a whole bag of feathers for me, which was really lovely. So that's the kind of thing that, yeah, I don't get being out here on my own. People bringing me feathers to the property, and that's fine. But I will appreciate making from those feathers something beautiful and enjoy them. Yeah, so I really do look forward to making something from those, making a pair of earrings from those feathers, because I've had them for a few years now. And I did make a pair of with a rooster similar shape to this for the shop, but I haven't made those small rounded feathers. I hadn't made a set. Banter. I've been holding on to those ones, and I think it's time to make something out of them. I'm going to try and see if I can replicate. One of those is a bit too tight, I feel, so I'm going to try and see if I can make another one. It's really quite cold and miserable here today, and so I can't put the dogs inside because they're a bit wet. I need to go and dry them before doing that. And there's a lot of roadworks happening that's making a lot of noise down on the highway. It keeps triggering them. So I'm just going to have another sip of my lemon and ginger tea here. And then I'm going to come over and tell you what it is I'm doing next. So I've now left the feathers long enough to glue to be secure to do the next part. And I've got my 3 different lengths of leather, and I'm going to start with the longest one, and I'm going to again cut a little bit of an angle just to create a point, just to taper the leather down, and then I will glue that to the top of the feather, and on top of that other piece of leather that I glued to the back of the feather to actually support it. That's the wrong side. There we go. That was the back of the leather. Yeah, so that'll be glued. This one has it glued to the back, and then I'll glue that one to the front, and then I'll be adding some copper wiring. So I'll just try and do that carefully. And while I do, I was going to tell you about the furniture that is in my studio shed. So this furniture, a lot of it is actually from our local high school here. My former husband is a high school teacher, and that's how we moved to this region, was based on his career. And when we first moved here, there was a fire in the canteen. It wasn't the canteen one that we got the furniture from. Then about 2 or 3 years later, there was another fire in the art room, science block, metalworks section, and that whole building was rebuilt. So any furniture that was left behind that didn't get damaged in the fire, they actually sold. They had a big garage sale in the hall, and I picked up quite a bit of furniture from that. So I picked up art benches, science benches. The bench I'm working on here is a science bench, and I really like it because it's old timber furniture, and it's functional. And also because I'm not terribly tall, the height of these are actually for like high school students and works beautifully for me. I could, if I wanted to, oh, I actually did to one of the benches, I added casters, and I've thought about that too. And that's just a small movable bench. It was a little science bench. And I've thought about that for the bigger work benches. If I um, felt the need in when I had my commercial space and I brought everything into the commercial space from my studio shed, I did not add casters to it because the second, especially the second place I was in, was a beautiful heritage building and it had kauri pine timber floors, and so I just left the furniture fixed in place. It was really only the one bench that had movable casters on it, um, the one little table. The rest were fixed in place. But I have thought about that, you know, down the track I might add lockable casters and have it so that the benches can move around easier, depending on where I'm located next. But that is a part of the moving out of here that is challenging for me to process, because it's like, do I get rid of all of my beautiful furniture? And not all of it's from the high school. When I opened up the commercial space, I actually went scouring around the region and beyond to get beautiful timber desks, because I had a creative co-working space in there with desk area, and they were all old desks. And this is one that I've kept. And originally it would have had leather on the top of it, but I did have leather top desks, which I ended up selling when I moved out of the commercial space because I had way too many desks for my space. And the desk behind me, I don't know if you can see that properly, but it's got these beautiful rounded edges. This desk is actually a friend's uh, grandfather who made that desk. And so that's pretty special. Then I've got this big old drafts table, which I picked up somewhere in Canberra, I think it was. And it's fantastic, with a big drawer for for the cutting mats, and I put my quilting rulers, which I'm not a quilter, but I use the quilting rulers for leather work a lot. And so it's furniture like that I'm really quite attached to. I mean, let alone, I don't know if you can see my trestle shelf over there. That's a big trestle shelf. Now that is pretty special because I've had that since we lived on the Central Coast. And so that's probably, I think I've had that for maybe 17 years, maybe even longer. And the trestle and the planks were actually one of our neighbours was a painter, and he was an older man. And when he passed away, about a year after he passed away, his wife had a garage sale and moved on a lot of what she just couldn't hold on to anymore. And his painter's trestle, which was actually the painter's trestle that he did his work on, ended up being something that I acquired. And the big planks, there were two big planks that came with it, and they are such beautiful trestles. I have carted those around from house to house. They were inside the house when we first moved here in the larder. And then when I opened up the commercial space, I took them into the commercial space. And then while I was in that commercial space, someone else came along and said they had a very similar trestle set, and if I would like to have it, I could pick them up off their property. And so I did. And that trestle set is now inside the house. So when I moved the commercial space back here, or my studio space back here, I ended up having another set of trestles in the house and have picked up more planks since then. So all authentic old timber planks that are used for painting. So they have the metal strapping at the ends of them to reinforce them and protect the ends. And it's just beautiful pieces like that. The stories in the furniture, and there's so many more pieces of furniture that I could tell you the stories of that are not only in my studio shed but in the house, that have been collected from various places along my journey. And I just love old furniture, and furniture with stories even more so, and even suitcases. All of those suitcases behind me were suitcases that I've collected over many years. And when I traveled to trade at markets, I would take the suitcases with all of my goods in them and then set up a market stall with the suitcases. And I know that is now very common, but we're talking about 15 years ago. It wasn't as common back then to do that. And so I used to get a lot of people asking if they could buy the suitcases because they were getting hard to come by. I never sold my suitcases, as you can see, because I still have them. And when I had the shop, I had suitcases on display in there as well. And again, had a lot of people ask if they could buy the suitcases. I did end up selling one suitcase, which was a pretty special story because that suitcase was a family suitcase from a family in this region, from the Wee Jasper area. And one of my customers saw the name on the side of the suitcase, and that was her married name. And when we opened up the inside, there was more detailing on the inside of who owned the suitcase, and it turned out to be, I don't know, great grandmother or something, someone in the family. And so I did sell that to her because that was special for them. It's little treasures like that that I think make up the magic of our life, and that is, to me, a big part of being an artisan is not only the materials that I work with, but the tools and the furniture adds and contributes to that experience. So I am struggling to work out what I will hold on to and what I will let go of. There are some things that I can go, yep, I'll definitely let go of that, but not everything is that easy to let go of because it's been, 15, nearly 20 years in the collector, or maybe even 25 for some pieces. I'm sure I've got a trunk inside that I got while I was when I had my photography business, and it's a metal trunk that I bought to cart all of my photography gear in. And so, these are very precious items for me personally. So I don't really want to let go of them. But not knowing where I'm going to move into means I may have to store some things while I do that. But anyway, that's just a little tidbit of information that I thought you might find interesting, because our lives are not necessarily about the material things, but sometimes the material things become a part of our story and our journey, and they actually are infused with treasured memories, and that's pretty special. So I definitely am one that likes to surround myself with treasured materials and items that infuse my days with magic, which is why I like to create items that also infuse the days of others with a bit of magic. So soon I'm going to put the copper wiring on. I'm nearly finished putting the leather on, and then I'll show you what I'm doing with that. This is something I like to do before I actually attach it to the leather and feather, is just curl the end over a bit, and I start right down close to the top of the floppy part of the feather. And sometimes I trim that off too, depending on the feather, but I won't with this one today. And it's fiddly, so I am going to try and talk through this while I do it, but it does take a bit of concentration, this bit, because I like to squash it down a little bit, but not squash it flat, because I still want it to be like cylindrical, but I need to hold it in place so I can then wind the wire around without damaging the feather. And of course I can't seem to do it now that I'm talking to you. There we go. So I'll squash that one down. Once I get this started, it's a lot easier, but hold it into place and wrap that around. Pliers make it a lot easier. Oops, that didn't do what I wanted it to do. Try and fix that little mistake. And you don't want to manipulate the wire too much, because every little mark you make on it shows. That's why I try to be very gentle with it. But at the same time, it's feeling into it. It's a bit intuitive. actually working with the material, not necessarily from my head, but more let my hands and the tools guide the actions, which is what I really like about handcrafting and why I think it's so therapeutic to handcraft, because there's probably a lot of theory behind it, but it is very intuitive. Now that I've got that started, you can see I'm starting to create the binding. I'll tell you about something that was an experience that I had with when I was in the shop and making on site. And there was a lady and her husband that came in. They were from the South Coast, and she was a jeweler, and she had a very similar ring to my ring here. This is actually a Moroccan Tuareg ring, and so it was more similar shape, the shield ring, but she actually makes shield rings, and they were made with, she had in it symbols from Baltic goddesses. I'm sure it was Baltic goddesses, but such a beautiful piece of jewelry she had on. And she showed me photos of other pieces that she created, and it was it was amazing. I loved it. But we were talking about this and her work and what was behind her work. And while we were discussing it, I was making, and that's what I loved about having the shop. I could continue making while working in the retail, because I could still sell to people while I was making by just talking to them, and then just go over to the counter and run through whatever it was that they wanted to buy. But we were talking about the jewelry that she was making, and at that time I had taken apart an old doily, which I don't know if that's just even an Australian word, but those crocheted kind of table decorations, placemats, and I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it, but it's lace work. Let's just say lace work. And I used to work with these doilies and this lace work and take them apart carefully, cut them and cut components out of them, and then rework them into designs on the back of linen gowns, or even on the front as a feature. But I'll actually include some photos in, because I did have some that were just beautiful. Like there was one that were little butterflies that were hand crocheted, and I cut around them, and then I created a design on the back of the linen, what I used to call the Giselle gown. They were a kimono style gown, and yeah, stunning. And anyway, I was making one for myself, and I was making a short version. It was a turquoise, and it was just lovely that it was turquoise, and I was talking to someone that was from the coast. But I didn't know what the design was going to be, because I didn't have a set design in mind when I made these things. I just intuitively let the pieces form and let me know what they wanted to be. And this particular crocheted lacework doily had a lot of little diamonds in it. And while I was talking to her, my hands were just playing around with these little pieces that I'd cut out. And you have to be careful not to actually unravel them or do anything, damage them, much like this copper wire work. It's very delicate work. And so I was talking to her, and I was just playing with it. And then we talked for ages. I got to the end of that conversation, and I looked down, and this design had just formed in front of me without me even really looking at it. It wasn't like I was sitting there going, that one goes there, that one goes there, that's how that's going to work. It was like the conversation unfolded this design that then became the design I attached to the back of my Giselle gown, my 3/4 Giselle gown, and I still love it. And it was a North Star design. That's what I ended up calling it. It looked like a North Star for me. And yeah, I love that garment, and I wear it a lot, mainly over summer, spring, and autumn, not so much in winter. But it's things like that just the magic that happens when you are out of your head and into your hands, and just letting it unfold as it is called to unfold, not trying to control it all and control the outcome. A lot of my work has been like that, where I've created things for the first time by just letting it reveal itself to me, rather than me thinking I know what it should look like. and how it should end up, because when I have had that expectation that I know what it should look like and how it should end up, often it doesn't end up the way that I think it should. It ends up being a mess, or I just have to adapt it to make it work and accept that what I had thought was actually not what was meant to be. And that can be representative of life, right? It's not all within our control. Sometimes the elements and pieces just form together and create this magic that was unexpected, that we ourselves could not have predicted. And so that is why I turn to handcrafting when I am processing something challenging, because I let life reveal to me what I couldn't see or what I couldn't have thought for myself, and create. So, yeah, just thought I'd share that with you. I hope that's a little bit of inspiration for you to take away from any challenges that you might be faced with, and considering that making is medicine is the topic of this video is for that very reason, because I do find it very therapeutic, and it's a beautiful way to process the challenges and lean into the unknown, or let life actually support the thriving that we desire with the elements that we are not ourselves aware of, because we can't control everything. It's like the weather. We might have wanted a sunny day and it's ended up being rainy, and then that rain would have led us to do something differently that we wouldn't have done otherwise if it was sunny, and then that's magical, right? Because we end up with an outcome that we hadn't foreseen because we responded to the conditions and made the most of it. And that's how I'm choosing to approach this current transition I'm going through. It's not expecting that I have all of the answers to what life is leading me towards and how it should be, because how it should be is how it ends up being. It's not always how I think it should be. And actually, that makes me think of, I haven't done my challenge yet, but there is a challenge that I'm taking part in, and for content creators. And the topic of today was what's your big picture vision, or what you would create? I think it's something like that. Anyway, what it reminded me of was how before I opened up my commercial space, I had a photography commercial space. So I'm referring here to the creative co-working artisanal space that I opened up. But when I opened up that space, the year before opening it, I spent actually planning for that business, and I knew I had a really clear vision for what I wanted that space to be. I wanted it to be a community-based space, but not a community-based space in terms of not a not-for-profit. I wanted it to be a profitable space. I wanted it to be a for-purpose business that supported creative professionals from our region and beyond. And I wanted it to be where people could come together and support each other in building their creative profession. And there were 3 stages to that business that I had in my business plan. And the first one was called the incubator, and that was just a small inception space. Oh, it was in inception space, sorry. And that was just a test run to see if it would work in the region, if I could actually get other people to be involved. And it was to start out with just three women in the actual space, and then selling on behalf of about 4 or 5 other makers and designers. It was a very small space. It was meant to be for 2 years, ended up being 1 year, and then I moved into the bigger heritage building, which was quite a large space and enabled me to expand into the next phase of the business plan and vision. And that was then called the inception space, where the incubator space, sorry, which was actually meant to be the middle phase of the business journey. The third phase was to create a precinct. So in that incubator space was where people could come in and incubate their business ideas, or those who already had a creative business underway could come and really thrive and let it pop. The whole idea was for people to come and soar. It was called Creator's Nest for that reason. It was a nest to incubate and then soar, and to soar alongside of each other. And so the third phase of that business was meant to be a precinct where people have their own separate studio space, which they could turn into a shop front if they wanted to. And then there would be a central shop space or communal space that people could sell through under the Creative's Nest banner. And that would be an old site with old sheds and buildings that people could take over parts of and turn into their own unique creative space. And then there would be a communal space where we could sell out of, and also a cafe and nursery and beautiful garden space. And so that bigger picture vision was to create a tourist attraction for the town that was pretty spectacular, which Creator's Nest in the Heritage Building ended up being a tourist attraction for the town. That was pretty spectacular. And I was in there for 5 years. So it worked very well. And we went through COVID during that period. So it was tricky keeping that going. And the creative co-working had to cease operation during the COVID period. And so the focus ended up being more retail. And then we were slowly able to bring back in workshops and things. But for the 5 years that it was in there, it was a beautiful, magical space. But that was really a part of my bigger picture vision for life. Like since closing that space, I had thought if I had another bigger picture vision that I would work towards, it would be some kind of retreat center. And when I say retreat center, I'm not just talking about somewhere where you do plant medicine and yoga. I want it to be a retreat center that is about learning the skills for life. And the skills for life being artisanal skills on how to cook, how to grow your food, how to make the baskets that you actually harvest your crop in, how to make the clothes that you wear, and how to tan the skins that you then turn into what it is you want to make. That would be my bigger picture vision. I don't actually know that is something I will ever create. I mean, I've just turned 50 not long ago, and it's a big vision for someone who's a single mum at 50. So I'm not dismissing that it could never happen. It's just I'm not putting all of my energy towards it like I did for Creator's Nest. I put a lot of energy into Creator's Nest, realizing that dream and sustaining that. And yeah, I'm not doing that at the moment for a business. I am actually just sustaining a magical life myself and using creating as my medicine and my way of processing, not even just processing journeys, it's really processing challenges. It's really about creating magic for my everyday living experience as well as the everyday living experience of others. That's for me what making is about. So even if I don't have a retreat center, there will be a time once I've moved out of here and established myself in wherever I'm going to live next, that I would like to start actually traveling a little bit more and learning new skills and bringing those skills to a space that I can share it with others. And I was actually thinking about that in terms of like cultural appropriation. I would love to travel overseas and learn some artisanal skills from around the world. Now, I am Australian born into a Mauritian family who my parents were migrants to the country. And so I've never really felt like I am fully Australian or fully Mauritian. I'm just like this nowhere woman, just float. I'm just a citizen of the earth. It's like, that's what I am. And I'm quite happy to be a citizen of the earth. I think that is a beautiful citizenship to have, but I feel so connected to so many cultural activities and skills around the world. Like, I would love to go and see linen being loomed and being created in Lithuania. The linen that I use predominantly for my garments and even for my screen printing when I did screen printing was Lithuanian linen. And I would love to see flax being harvested and created into yarn and then made into linen. And even the in my last video, I talked about the ponchos and wraps that I wear. One of them is a organic Turkish cotton that's hand dyed with vegetable dyes, and the other one is linen and it's hand loomed. And then the third one, which I talked about, was actually it's llama, and I said it was alpaca because I do have an alpaca one as well, but it's actually llama, and that was made in Argentina. And I would love to go and visit those spaces, and not necessarily to learn how to make my own, although that would be amazing, but just to see where it's made. But then learn some skills in crafting from those traditional locations and techniques that I just don't have myself, or just be introduced to new things. Even when I was in high school, I did ancient history, and I loved ancient Egyptian jewelry. I was fascinated by it. And that's why I actually wanted to get into metalsmithing and beadwork. But there are so many things to learn and not enough time in our days and our weeks to do it all, which is partly why I'm like, I'm not sure if I want a retreat center. Because one thing about having my commercial space was I I looked after it, and it was a lot of work for mainly me, who did all of the cleaning and I mean, I'm sure I could build a team. I could have built a team, but the location and the time frame. The first 5 years of business really is the inception phase of any business, and so unless you've got big funding behind you, it grows organically, which is how I operated that business. For the first 2 years, I waited tables in a local restaurant to be able to pay the rent for that space so that I could build that business after working from home for many years. So I was very passionate about getting that business up off the ground. In the next phase of my journey, I don't necessarily want to be trapped in a location where I have to be all the time to keep it going. And that is the challenge of, do I want to have a retreat center? Unless I can do it with a group of other people and we share that load, because I actually really want to travel the world, and I want to be introduced to artisanal techniques that I can amalgamate into my own techniques. And that's where it comes into the cultural appropriation part of it. I'm not trying to culturally appropriate here. I want to integrate all of these beautiful artisanal skills that have been around for hundreds or thousands of years, and and combine them with other things that I have learned, and just bring about a whole new kind of, give it a new take, or not even give it a new take, just use it to add to my own style and skills, and bring it to other people to connect with the making for themselves, and create their own unique, their own unique outcome with it, because we live in a global society, and actually not anything, or very few things these days, are actually going to be single origin completely. Like there's always going to be the influence of other cultures, and because we are a global society, and we are coming to a point where it's all integrated now. So I often have people stop me in the street, and I said this in my last video because that is why I did a video on my Empower Dressing Guidebook as a focus, and how to help people feel empowered, because I often get stopped in the street and people comment either on something I'm wearing, like a piece of jewelry or my kangaroo fur vest, or even when I'm wearing coats or anything, just whatever I'm wearing. I get stopped in the street or at the supermarket or just at a cafe, and people comment on them. And my earrings are often something that attracts attention, and even at the service station. And I often have people say I have a very Native American look, but I'm not just creating with Native American styling and skills. I actually draw my inspiration from many cultures around the world, and my actual makeup, as my genetic makeup, is actually quite mixed. So even as a Mauritian, it's not just straight like one particular. Mauritius is quite a melting pot of contributing cultures, and my blood mix is made up of quite a few different contributing bloods. So, and I grew up here in Australia. So I am not trying to culturally appropriate. I think I'm here to amalgamate. So that is potentially a part of my purpose here on earth, is to just be a representation of all of the above and bring it all together and share it with the collective. Share it with the people in my community that want to actually immerse themselves in something different, something new, and create their own take on it. So that would be my wish. Now I'm going to stop and go and get some lunch. My stomach is grumbling, so I will take a break from this and come back and put it all together and share the end result. We're getting a little bit cold out here, so hopefully I'll get this finished before I freeze. I won't freeze. I've got my little fire going. But what I have done is I've finished all of the pieces now. So these are all that will come together to form the earrings, and I've got my little tubular spring type things that will be the feature. And I'm going to just tie a knot. I'm actually going to place my strands in position where I want them to end up. Especially the top two strands are important. And then the third one, I might even glue those together actually, just so they don't slip around. And then I can come back and finish off the top. Glue those two strands together and then get the other two and glue them in a similar position. Just double check that they are in a similar position. Yeah, okay. And I will then actually tie a little knot that I will loop around these two strands so that my springy beads, don't know what to call them, the little beads that I created out of copper wire that look like springs, the cylindrical beads. Oh, hang on, there we go. We'll then go over the top of that. So are they even? Yes, I think so. And I also want to make sure that that one's actually sitting off to the right, like that. And that one's sitting off to the left. Beautiful. All right. So then I'm going to get this longer one. I don't want it to go too far up, so I've got to be careful of this. But I will actually create a knot. Maybe would have, I actually like that length. I'm not sure I do want to do that. So I will do something else. I really like that length. I don't want it to be much shorter than that. So maybe what I'll do, let's put those on and have a look. I just needed something to stop the spring from sliding all the way down. I don't want that to happen. So as you can see with these, I usually put a knot around the base of the bead. Actually, I'll do that down here. I usually put a knot at the base of the bead so it stops it from sliding down. So maybe I will do that with another piece of leather, or I put a little strap wire feature. Maybe I'll do that instead. No, let me think about this for a moment. Do I just experiment with tying a knot around and see how short it'll make it? Maybe I can get away with it, because then I can actually glue it to the back of and it will be inside. It doesn't have to be a part of what the earrings are being held up by. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll do that. I think I'll do that. All right, so I'll show you on the second one what I've done, what I'm about to do. So I can slide that up and down to where I want it to be. So what I'm doing is taking the longer strand, sitting it in place, and then looping the leather around, and at the back, pushing it back up onto itself, creating just a slip knot. Push it back up through the loop, and then I'm grabbing the and then I take the pliers and actually tighten that knot. I don't want it to be too long, that little piece. So there we go. Got a little piece there that I'll glue into place, and then the spring will sit over the top of all of those, and then I will attach that to the earring findings. Yeah, that works. All right. So just double check the lengths. Make sure I'm happy with the lengths and the positioning before I glue anything else down. Turn that one around. Now, one thing I will let you know that I've learned the hard way is you've got to be very careful with these rounded pliers and leather lacing. They tend to cut through the leather lacing very easily. So if you use it like I just did then to undo a knot, you have to be very careful not to press too hard. I prefer to use the flat nose pliers than the round ones to do that, because yeah, they just seem to cut all the way through and you end up losing a length of lacing, which is a pain. So I don't like that. So I try and avoid it, but I just, because they're all red handled pliers, I just picked up the wrong one. But it is something I like to be really mindful of, not to use the round ones when moving, when pulling a piece of leather tight. So just double check that they're sitting the way I want them to. It's starting to get quite dark in here, so I'm going to run out of time. Plus I need to go into town to pick up my son from work and get some groceries. So I'm hoping I will get this finished today. I should, but I'm just also not wanting to rush it and make a mess of it, because that's just not the way I operate. So while I was preparing lunch, I was thinking about the topic of cultural appropriation and how that has been a big topic over the years, and rightly so. I'm actually not for cultural appropriation. That's not what I'm saying. But it just made me think of a conversation I had with a coaching client that I was coaching on her digital presence online. And she is from a rural location. And she actually said to me one day, actually, I think it was like the second time we met, she's like, I do that look. And I thought, what look? And she's like, the boho look. I do that look sometimes. The boho look. And I was thinking, can see how people think that way, because fashion has done that. It's created, the fashion industry has done that, where it's created looks, and we go for the look of the season. I'm not one to go for the look of the season. I go for what actually serves my lifestyle, which is why I created the Empower Dressing Guidebook, to inspire others to curate a wardrobe that actually aligns with their style and lifestyle and unique physique, because we all have a unique physique. We are not all designed the same way. And I was thinking about that in terms of the boho look. So I do not dress like this because it's a look that I am going for. It actually just does align with my lifestyle, my values. I like to be connected to wild nature and to be reminded of our connection to wild nature. And so that's why I use a lot of the elements in my work of wild birds and like kangaroo. And yeah, it's not a look, it's my look. um, and yes, I am bohemian. I am different. I am not like everybody else. Which we are all bohemian, really, when we think about it. We are all our unique selves, but it's just funny. It's funny to think about it the way that society has labeled us. And we are such a global community these days that it blends. There's so much blending that takes place, and it's not necessarily about appropriation. Sometimes it just is. It becomes a way of life that's integrated into an existing culture, and yeah, a whole new way is formed. I feel like one strand's longer than the other, so I'm just going to lengthen this one. Shorten this one, I think. I can't lengthen a strand. What am I saying? So, I hope you've enjoyed actually making with me today and processing some of the thoughts that come through the making process, or me processing them while you listen or watch. It is something I would like to share more of, is that the experience of what I've learned through my making, what I've discovered does and doesn't work according to the way that I've tried it. I am open to suggestions if anyone has any on improvements that I could make in what I've created, in terms of if you know of another way to do something that you've seen me do that you think, oh, actually, if you did it this way, it would do this. I would be more than happy to hear about that, because I'm always open to learning. I do not believe I have all the answers in life. I believe that there is more to learn in this existence, and that's what we're here to do, to grow and expand our knowledge and wisdom. And this is a fun way to do it, to share it with others. So, all right, I think we're ready to put the loops. I should glue that into place. My glue's getting a little dry because I didn't cover it, but I'll just glue that down, and then it'll be a matter of putting the finishing touches on. Now, I said earlier that the earrings that I've made previously with copper, leather, and tawny frogmouth feathers, I find heavy if I wear them all day. One trick that I have found to be handy is when I'm in the car, if I'm driving long distance, I take my earrings off while I'm driving and I hang them on my dream catcher in the car. And they become an adornment in the car, but it gives my ears a bit of a break from the weight of the copper. So that's a good use of a dream catcher too, isn't it? On the back of the on the rear view mirror. Yeah, so I found that to be really a good way to just give my ears a break, because I do love big earrings, but they do. I would like to actually try different grade hooks for the different grade wire for the silver hooks. That is something I plan to do, because I think that'll make a difference. And I would also love to be able to make my own hooks at some stage, but right now I'm working with what's in my stash and what's available to me. So there's not necessarily acquiring anything new right now. There we go. These are coming along nicely. And so now it's just a matter of putting the hooks on. Not the hooks, the findings that attach to the hook. So I've got brass, an antique brass version that I like to use. I find it helpful to actually open them up a little bit. I open them up just a little bit, not too much, because otherwise they're really hard to work with. And I decide on which way is the front. Yeah, that's the front. And then I cut the piece, the leather, to the length that I think I need it. And then I glue them in there first before I close it up again. So I'm just checking the length first and the positioning. Got to open that one up, that's why I struggled with it. Sometimes it's good to use 2 pliers too, so you can actually get to hold the end with 1 plier. But trying to do this quickly now because it's getting dark. And well, it's not super dark, but it is getting dark in the shed. So, all right. So I'm going to just cut that to where I want it to finish. And then a bit of glue inside the metal casing. And lay that in there. And I like to get the pliers and just press it in first. Really give that a good press. And like I said, a lot of this is, intuitive. You start to work out how different materials respond. And that one. And these are nearly done. Yay! I love these feathers. I don't have an awful lot to work with because the bird itself has a lot of downy feathers and they're not practical for this kind of work. But they are beautiful feathers to work with, and I just love the patterning on them and the meaning that I ascribe to them, which is, again, in the Empower Dressing Guidebook, I talk about that, the actual medicinal and magical aspect of jewelry, that it can have meaning for your life, and you can create things as talismans. You can actually infuse them with intention. I actually see crafting as a way of, it's intentional. Crafting for me is intentional, and making jewelry for me is intentional. It will serve to remind me of something that I have overcome or something that I have acquired in terms of a skill set or a way of being that I've been working towards, a reminder of what I need to let go of and what I can call in more of and support in from the universe and all of its inhabitants. And yeah, so I think jewelry is both magical and medicinal. So let's add our little hooks. These are pre-made sterling silver hooks that I like to work with. And then I can put them on and show you, even though the glue's not quite dry still. So let me know if you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment if you'd like to see more of this type of thing where I share what I'm working on, actually making it while I'm talking to you, or let me know if that's too distracting. I mean, I'm sure different people are going to have different ways of appreciating something and not appreciating something. So, but I'm just curious as to whether or not, because this is a new thing for me to do, and I definitely find it trickier to concentrate on what I'm doing while I'm talking, but I used to do it a lot in the shop, so I know that it is possible. I just am a little bit out of practice, I think, because I've spent so much time working here without talking to people. And even before I opened a shop, I had a friend who used to come here and hang out in the shed with me on particular days, and then she ended up working for me and with me in the shop, so that was really lovely, and we used to talk while we worked. So these are my new tawny frogbill, because they have that same elemental aspect as the bigger ones, but just not as much weight behind them. And I would also like to do some with bone, actually create some bone beads. So there we go. How's that? You like my new earrings? New tawny frog mouth and copper earrings. Ta-da! I will take a proper photo of them and include that. But anyway, that's it for today. Enough making. It's time to pack up and close up the shed and head off into town. So enjoy the rest of your day, night, wherever you are in the world, and I look forward to seeing you back here soon. With this morning, I have come out and had a look at my earrings again, and I actually decided that I wasn't too keen on the balance with the big springy loop at the top. I actually did do a video and photos of the finished product, so you can see what that looked like. But I have redone one, also taken a photo of the difference in what I made originally and what I've adapted it to. So I'm going to finish off the second one now, redo that. The fortunate thing about this is I was able to actually just slide those spring-like beads off over the top, which was very handy. And these won't go to waste because I do, when I make my kangaroo fur vest, I'm not sure if you can see, but I actually do put beads at the top of the tassels. They're a separate bead. And I plan to make another fur vest which will have a similar feature on it, and I'm going to use the copper beads for that. So waste not, want not is a part of the theory here, and nothing ever goes to waste. So I just thought I would share with you really quickly that I have adapted the design, and that is actually a part of the beauty of trying, testing, tweaking, and deciding on what actually really does work. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I will go and finish these now and see you back here next time for more making and sharing the process of learning with you.